and dal. That was the balanced meal. Now you don't have dal, and they're selling something called dal as a substitute for the poor. This dal is actually a cereal. It's wheat blended with soya, extruded into pellets that look like dal. Can you imagine a world where everything we eat is a false food? So not only do we have to defend ecological farming because of the conservation of resources, not only do we have to defend and promote ecological farming because solution to climate change, we have to defend ecological farming. It's the only way we'll get food. And while we can cheat the supermarket shelves, we can't cheat this amazing body which is made of the same earth which gives us food. Most cultures are thought in terms of 4 or 5 elements. In India, we think of the 5 elements, with earth as the primary element, and food is transformed earth. We are made of those same elements, our body. And the more we assault our bodies with fake food, the more disease prevalence there is. 1 billion people are now hungry, according to the FAO, but the figure that really pains me is half of the hungry are those who are producing the food. And they're hungry because every bit of that production is based on debt and borrowing, including in the rich part of the world. Every farmer is indebted. And the reason small farms disappear is that when they can't pay back their debt and their farm faces foreclosure, then they're driven off the land. In India, this phenomena of a debt-creating agriculture has pushed 200,000 farmers to suicide in the last decade. 200,000 farmers suicide, something we've never known in India. Why are the majority of the people who are hungry food producers? Because the system based on an external input makes you borrow. When you borrow, you have to sell what you've grown to pay back the debt. So the rice is in their field and they can't eat it. The corn is in their field and they can't eat it. So the real solution to hunger is an internal input system which reduces the costs of production, therefore allows the farm family to eat what they've grown and sell the extra. The surpluses we have in the world are what I call pseudo-surpluses. They're pseudo-surpluses extracted from a debt we are not paying to the land, pseudo-surpluses extracted from the farming families and households so that the women and children are going hungry in rural areas across the world, and it's extracted from the third world. And we have 2 elements of a crisis in the negotiations. The first is this issue of the mandatory legally binding agreement which was created at the Earth Summit versus political declaration. The second is about the issue of compensation and financing the third world. Europe had made a flimsy declaration of 10 billion and then they dropped it to 2 billion. I was just doing a rough calculation. India is now spending 1.3 trillion rupees as subsidies for chemical fertilizers. One country. Converted into dollars, $30 billion right there out of Indian taxpayer money to finance Cargill and other fertilizer companies and the fossil fuel industry. We don't have to be begging for 2 billion when we could be saving 30 billion by going organic. And if you apply this across the board, one of the big pushes right now by foundations like the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation is this thing called Agra. And that's not the place where the Taj Mahal is. Agra is the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa after we've seen what the Green Revolution did to India. It destroyed the water. There are now NASA studies showing that the groundwater in the Green Revolution areas has as good as disappeared. It destroyed the biodiversity. It has caused so much pesticide contamination that now a train departs from Punjab, where the Green Revolution was introduced, to go to Bikaner, where there's a charitable cancer hospital, and it's called the cancer train. Half the people on that train are cancer patients going. And it's the Green Revolution that has gifted cancer to Punjab. Through the biodiverse ecological systems that we have built through Navanya, we have increased production up to 5 times more, production of food. By conserving resources, we've actually increased food production. And what's even more, rural incomes have gone up tenfold, because farmers are now producing more of better quality with a high diversity of products, so they are not in a distress having to sell their tomato at no matter what cost it goes, or having to sell their potato at whatever price Lay will pay. And I did a calculation on that. For every packet of chips that costs 10 rupees, the farmer is getting 0.08. So the polarization of the price the farmer gets and what the eater pays is getting deeper and deeper, which is another reason why we have to close the gap between the producer and the eater. We have to do it to reduce food miles, but we have to also do it for justice and fairness, to ensure that the producers get a fair share. I think, or even though the agriculture issue is not at the heart of negotiations right now, there is a danger that false solutions will rise very fast. And I just want to touch a bit on the false solutions that are on the horizon. I mentioned agro. Totally false solution. It will increase nitrogen fertilizer use, increase emissions. But along with increasing emissions, what it is going to do is increase the vulnerability of Africa to drought. We've done a major study for 2 years on comparing carbon return to the soil in ecological systems versus chemical systems. And I just want to run through the data, and it actually replicates the 39 studies you were talking about, done totally independently in different parts of the world. The percentage increase in carbon in organic systems compared to chemical systems is up to 25% in arid zone farming systems in India, 19% in semi-arid, 15% in subhumid, and 14% in the humid, which shows that it's actually the drier the area, the more your organic farming contributes to carbon. And it's the dry areas that are more vulnerable to climate change because of drought. It's increasing microbial activity, which is the ultimate test of fertility. For 59%, nearly 60% in the arid areas, 61% in the semi-arid, 62% in the subhumid, and 63% in the humid. But the other side of this is, it's that living organic carbon, the humus, that is the water reservoir. And in times of drought, what you want is your soil to be able to hold more moisture.